Be informed. SMS your name to 0406 000 UMA.
شكوت إلى وكيعي سوء حفظي.
قلبك الله يبارك فيك. طيب، الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد المبعوث رحمة للعالمين، وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين، وعلى كل من استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه ليوم الدين، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. ثم أما بعد، اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا، واجعلنا في طلب العلم لك من المخلصين، وتقبله منا وضعفه في ميزان حسناتنا إنك أنت البر الجواد الكريم. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the series that we began 2 weeks ago, talking about some of the great Muslim scholars. And the guest or the guest of honor for tonight's lesson is Imam Shafei rahimahullah. Abu Nu'aym al-Asbahani, when he described him, and many great scholars have spoken about the virtues of this Imam, he had this beautiful statement that I would like to begin with. He said, "Huwa al-Imam al-Kamil al-Alim al-Amil." He is the perfect Imam, the one that is filled with knowledge and the one that is filled with application of the knowledge that he has learnt. ذو الشرف المنيف والخلق الظريف, the one whose lineage is noble and the one whose manners are noble and excellent. له السخاء والكرم وهو الضياء في الظلم. He is known for his generosity, and he is the light at the time of darkness, meaning the light of his alim clears the darkness of ignorance. May Allah have mercy upon him. المتبع للسنن والآثار والمقتفي ما اتفق عليه المهاجرون والأنصار, the one who follows the sunan and the athar of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the one who follows what the muhajirun and the ansar have consented to, which is following the religion of Allah and the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Shafii, his name is Muhammad ibn Idris ibn al-Abbas ibn Uthman ibn Shafii ibn Sa'ib ibn Ubaid ibn Abd Yazid. He is Muhammad ibn Idris, and the name of his grandfathers is Al-Abbas, and the son of Uthman, the son of Shafii, the son of the Sa'ib. And he is originally from the city of Mecca. And he meets with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the grandfather Abdul Manaf. So therefore, Imam Shafii, Muhammad ibn Idris, is one of the relatives of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the things that distinguished the Imam Shafii as far as his lineage is concerned, besides the honor of being related to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that from his grandfathers there are 4 who were companions. There are 4 who are companions: Abd Yazid and Ubaid and the Sa'ib, who became Muslim after the Battle of Badr, and he was carrying the flag of Bani Hashim, the family of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they came out with the people of Quraysh forcefully, they coerced him to go out with them in the Battle of Badr. He was the one who was carrying the flag of Bani Hashim. And As-Sa'ib, he became Muslim after the Battle of Badr. He was caught, captured by the Muslims, and he freed himself, meaning he paid a ransom so he can get freed. Then after that, he became Muslim. So the Sahaba became surprised. And if you're planning to become Muslim, why pay a ransom in the first place? You could have just become Muslim and let's see, you join us. So he, radiallahu anhu, he said, ما كنت لأحرم المسلمين من مطمع في مالي. I would not have deprived the Muslims from a share from my wealth. So I wanted to give him some money as a ransom and then enter into Islam. And they say that As-Sa'ib, he used to have very similar features to the Rasul ﷺ in terms of his appearance. كان شبيه بالرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. You'll find that across the family of the Rasul there are different members who will have some similarities in their looks with the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم. One of them is Ja'far رضي الله عنه, and one of them is As-Sa'ib رضي الله عنه كذلك. Then his son Shafei also became Muslim, and he joined the Muslims, and therefore the Shafi'i, 4 of his grandfathers, and then the other 2, they are ranked from the ranks of the Tabi'een, but they were not known to be from the people of knowledge. So therefore that's something that distinguishes Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah away from any other great scholar from the scholars of the 4 madahib. His kunya was Abu Abdullah. And the way that we know his kunya is, firstly, it was given to him when he was at a young age. Second, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, once he was talking to his son, to the son of Imam Shafi'i. His name is Muhammad Abu Uthman. We're going to come to him. He said to him, I love you for 3 reasons. Speaking to the son of the Shafi'i. He said, I love you because you are from Quraysh, and because of the fact they're related to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I love you because you are the son of Abu Abdullah, meaning the Shafi'i. And I love you because you are from the people of the Sunnah. And I love you because you are from the people of the Sunnah. And the title of the Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah was Nasir al-Hadith. Nasir al-Hadith, the one who gave victory to the Hadith. And the ulama of history, they say that this either was given to him when he was in Mecca, and some they say that this was given to him when he was in Iraq. Now why is this particular title given to him? We're going to come and talk about this inshallah ta'ala. His family, his father Muhammad ibn Idris was a poor man. So from the beginning, Imam Shafi'i, he was born in a poor family. And the poverty of his father Muhammad caused him to migrate from Mecca to Medina, looking for work. He went to Medina, he couldn't find good work. So he moved from Medina to the Sham, and they settled in Gaza, and some they say they settled in Asqalan. Now Gaza and Asqalan, Gaza is Gaza, the one that we know now. Of course, the regions back then were bigger in terms of their, in terms of the borders. They were not as small as they are made today. So they say he settled there, but the situation of the family did not improve. So he decided to go to the Sham, to go into and further up in the land of the Sham, so he can actually find more work, see if he can improve the financial state of his family. And he died there, may Allah have mercy upon him, Idris. And he died shortly after Muhammad was born. So therefore, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, Muhammad ibn Idris was born an orphan. His father died shortly after his birth, and he was kept with his mother. His mother, now some of the historians, they try to say that she's also from the family of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore they make him more unique, from both sides from the family of the Rasul. But as Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, may Allah have mercy upon him, has stated, she's actually from a noble family, but she's from Yemen. So she's not related to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she's from the tribe of Azd, from the Yemen. He was born 150 Hijri. And really there's no khilaf in relation to the date when he was born. They say he was born at the end of the month of Rajab on a Friday, 150 Hijri. His mother, being responsible for looking after him, she moved from Gaza and Asqalan down to the Hijaz area. And she stayed there with her family. She's from the from the tribe of Azad, from the Yemen. So she stayed with her relatives so they can actually support her. And he was around 2 years old at this particular stage. Afterwards, she thought of the fact that if I continue living with my family, then it is possible that the lineage of my son will actually be lost. Why? Because he's only one Muttalibi, one Qurashi young child in a complete tribe which is from Yemen, and his father is dead, and there's only his mother. So if his mother dies, who will know who he is? So at the end, she decided, in order to preserve the lineage of her son, to leave her family and to go down to the city of Mecca. And the second aim that she had is probably she thought, if his relatives that are living in Mecca, they know that he's related to them, they actually might help me in the process of bringing him up. So you can see from the start that the family of Imam Shafi rahimahullah was in a very bad state of poverty, and they would just continue moving from one place to the other for the sake of improving their situation. His mother, may Allah have mercy upon her, she was a pious lady, and they say that she was a abida, she was a person of worship. And there's no indication that she sought knowledge. However, the ulama, they mentioned that there was some incidents that happened in her life that show a very high level of intelligence. They said once she was called as a witness in a court, and she was brought with another lady and a man. The judge, when he was interrogating them, he decided to separate the women from each other, meaning he wanted to ask each lady by herself and then the man by himself. She refused. She said to him, no, you have no right in doing so. He said to her, why? He goes, if you do that, you're going to go against the Quran, because Allah says, أَن تَضِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا فَتُذَكَّرَ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. She says, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said to call two witnesses from the females, it was for the purpose of that if one of them forgets, then the second one would do what? Would remind her of what she forgets. And if you're going to do so, then you're going to violate the purpose or the wisdom of having two female witnesses. And he was shocked by her intelligence, or by her istinbat, by her inference from the ayah, and he went by that. So this is an indication that, mashallah, his family and his mother was a very bright lady, but she did not seek knowledge. They moved down to Mecca and they lived in Mecca, and he grew up in Mecca, rahimahullah. But again, the money and the world looked after by his family was not a lot. That's why when he was around 10 years old, just to speed up things a bit, one of his relatives said to him, you should go out and start looking for work so you can support your mother. Before that and after that, Imam Shafi rahimahullah, he wasn't really interested much in work. And he's talking about his memories, and he says, this relative of mine told me to do that, but I, from a young age, found my desire and found my enjoyment in seeking knowledge. And therefore I never listened to him. I never listened to him. The habit back then, it was for the children to be taken and to be put in a school where they actually learn the Quran, they learn how to read the Quran, and they memorize the Quran. And of course this was not done for free. People have to pay fees for that. His mother put him in a class to learn the Quran, but she was not able to afford paying for his tuition. So therefore the teacher agreed with her that, okay, I will teach him for free as long as he helps me in the process of teaching the kids. Now how would he do that? Now I'll tell you how he would do that. He says, we were poor and we could not pay the teacher. So I used to sit in the circle and the sheikh sits. Now back then and even today, when people learn Quran, you always take a particular portion. You take a page, you take a ruba', you take a particular portion. And the sheikh would actually say to them and write it for them, and they all will copy it in the papers. And then he will read it, and they'll read after who? After the sheikh. He says, and I used to sit and watch them. And by the time the sheikh reads to them what they should write, and they write it and repeat it after him, I would have memorized it. I would have memorized it. And then his teacher picked up on this. So I said to him, I'm not allowed to take a cent from you. You're allowed to stay in the circle, but you help me teaching the others. His memory, rahimahullah, he is, subhanallah, arrests in his heart. It gets fixed in his memory, and that's from the early signs of his intelligence, rahimahullah. And that shows you the care of Allah to him. That's why he actually memorized the Quran. By the time he reached the age of 7, he memorized the complete Quran. And he says, and when I was 10, I memorized the book of Muwatta. Actually, he memorized the book of Muwatta in a couple of days. It did not take him that long. From there, he, rahimahullah, finished the Quran. What's next to do? He wants to learn. He'll go around the mosque and he'll go sit from one circle to the other. And he'll sit down. What are they teaching? Whatever they are teaching, he listens. He memorizes. He listens. He memorizes. One circle to the other. And because he was poor, he did not afford to have paper. So he says, I used to memorize everything I hear. But one day, I felt like writing. Everyone else writes. So he would go to the government departments, and they used to write the letters and things like this on papers. And he would ask him to give him the used paper. Papers that they have already used and they have written on them. He goes, you're going to throw them? Give them to me. So they'll give it to him. So he will take the used papers, and then he will turn them on the back, and he would write in them the hadith or the knowledge that he learns. And whenever he will not find used papers to write his ilm on, or whatever he's learning on, he'll go collect burns and he will write on it. Palm leaves, and he would write on it. And then he will take this, and at a young age, talking between 7 and 13, 15. And he will take this and he will actually collect them. They didn't have bookshelves. His mother used to have 2 massive pots at home, and he will put them in the pots. He says, until I filled up 2 massive pots from this. From the ilm that he used to write, may Allah have mercy upon him. Then from there, he realized that if he wants to learn the Sharia and he wants to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, then he has to perfect his Arabic. So he left Mecca and he went and he joined the tribe of Hudayl. The tribe of Hudayl back then were known to be the most eloquent of the Arabs. And he spent with them a couple of years. And they were Bedouins, meaning they moved from one place to the other. And he just joined them. No money, nothing. He'll just go with them. Wherever they travel, he travels. And he'll listen to them, learn from them the Arabic, memorize the poetry, memorize the literature, until he memorized all the poems of the tribe. One day, he returned to Mecca, and he says, I was writing, and I was reading the poetry, and I was moving my head. He's enjoying it. He loved poetry, may Allah bless him. So one of the Hajabiyin from the family of Bani Abdul Dar, he saw him, and he had a whip with him, so he hit him with a whip. And he said to him, you are from the family of the Rasul ﷺ, and you waste your time in reading the poetry. Go and join the circle of Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji. So the Shafei said to him, that's why I was learning poetry in the first place. إِنَّمَا كُنْتُ أَعِدُّ هَذَا لِهَذَا. I was only learning poetry in Arabic, so I can perfect my understanding of the Arabic language, so I can learn what the Sharia, the hadith of the Rasul ﷺ. And then he went and he joined the circle of Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji. Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji, who was he? He was the Mufti of Mecca. But he, may Allah have mercy upon him, meaning Imam Shafei, would not stop learning Arabic. And that's why he says, I kept on learning Arabic for 17 years in my life. Another narration, he says, I kept on learning Arabic for 20 years. That's why Imam Shafei rahimahullah was so eloquent that people used to come and sit in his lessons for one reason: to hear him speak. Al-Rabi', one of his students, he says, when we're sitting in the circle, we're sitting around him, his students, we find that people go and sit in the masjid and they sit at the back. Regular attendees. One time after the other, why don't they join the circle? So I approached one of them. I said, you're coming, you've been attending for a while, it doesn't look like you're seeking knowledge, why don't you just come join us? He said, no, we're not coming here to learn Sharia. We are coming here to hear the Shafi'i speak. That's how eloquent he was. That's why one of his students, Sufyan ibn Uyayna from the Scholars of Hadith, we're going to come to him, he used to refer to the Shafi'i when he was young in relation to explaining the meaning of some words in the Hadith of the Rasul ﷺ. And he will say to his students, Salu hadha al-ghulam, ask this young man from the eloquence of his speech, may Allah have mercy upon him. And that's why he perfected his Arabic. So therefore, and he will learn from this an important point, if you want to excel in the area of Sharia, perfect your Arabic. Without it, you're going to always find that you're going to be less competent in understanding the words of the Quran and the words of the Hadith of the Rasul ﷺ. And scholars, we're going to come to how scholars, they always refer to him, rahimahullah. He was given the post of ifta, meaning he was given the permission to be a mufti when he was 15 years old. By who? By the mufti of Mecca, Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji. He would look at him and he would say to him, Afti ya Aba Abdullah. Oh Abdullah, I allow you to give fatwa, for wallahi you are worthy of giving fatwa. From that age, 15, rahimahullah, he was actually by the mufti of Mecca allowed to what? To give fatwa. And once he finished for Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji, he would go around, who are the other scholars that have knowledge, and he will go and sit with them. That's why he took his fiqh from Muslim ibn Khalid al-Zinji, and he took his hadith from Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna from the big scholars of hadith, and he is from the people that even Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah and many of the major scholars of hadith would travel from Baghdad, would travel from Central Asia to go down and to collect the hadith of Sufyan ibn Uyayna. And he learned from Sufyan ibn Uyayna until he learned all his hadith. That's why Bishr al-Marisi from the scholars of Iraq, when he met the Shafei at a young age during Hajj, and he returned back to his people, he said to them, I met a young man, if he is with you, you'll never lose. And if he is against you, then prepare for a fierce battle. If this young man grows up, he'll be the scholar of his time. He'll be the man of his dunya. He said to them, his name is Muhammad ibn Idris. So therefore, from the time that he was a teenager, the news about him reached Baghdad. And people heard about him. May Allah have mercy upon him. Besides his interest in knowledge, he was also interested in archery. Amr ibn Sawadi, he says, I was sitting with the Shafei, and he was talking to us about when he was young. He says, when I was young, I was passionate about two things. One thing is archery, and the second thing is knowledge. And he said, I kept on training until I will get 10 out of 10. And if you put targets for him, 10 targets, he will actually not miss one. And then he, may Allah have mercy upon him, became quiet. He went silent. And he did not describe his knowledge. So Amr ibn Sawad, he knew that he was quiet out of his humbleness. So he said to him, I swear by Allah, your accuracy in ilm is higher than your accuracy in archery. And he praised him. And he also was a good horse rider. And that's why they say he was a faris. Al-Rabi', he says that the Shafi'i, he will actually be able to balance himself on a galloping horse by grabbing one E in his hand, by having one hand on his E, and he will grab the horse only with one hand. And he can maintain his balance at full speed of the horse. May Allah have mercy upon him. So not only a scholar, but also a warrior. The ulama, they say about the secret of his eloquence in his speech. He says, when I was young, I saw the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in my dream. And then he looked at me and he said to me, who are you? And he said, I said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I am from your family. So he said to me, approach. So he approached the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he said, so the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took from his saliva and he said to me, open up your mouth. And I opened up my mouth in my dream, and he ran his saliva on my tongue and on my lips. And since that day, I did not make a mistake in my speech. That's why Yunus ibn Abdul A'la, from the scholars of Egypt, he says, when the Shafei used to speak, we used to get intoxicated by his words. And we will wonder, how could someone speak with such eloquence? His words used to have the effect of sihr. May Allah have mercy upon him. Another dream that he saw Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and he took off his ring and he placed it in the hand of the Shafi. So he didn't understand the meaning of the dream. So he went to someone and asked him, what does that mean? He said to him, inshallah, your fame will be equal to the fame of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. And these are some of the dreams, and there are other dreams that talk about this. I'm not going to talk about all of them. That he saw when he was young. May Allah have mercy upon him. He was a tall man. He was skinny. He had a long face. His face wasn't chubby. He had you can say his cheeks were like the cheeks of Abu Bakr. They were actually thin. And he was tanned. And he had a long nose. The Rabi', his student, he says his nose was too long. That if he wants to touch it with the tip of his tongue, he can. He had a long nose. May Allah have mercy upon him. And he was slim in his body, and he had a beautiful face. And he said, when you meet the Shafei, you look at him and you sense a sense of awe, and you feel that someone respectable that is in front of you, because that's the impression that we used to have when we see him. May Allah have mercy upon him. And he had a beautiful voice. He had a beautiful voice. Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy upon him, one of his students, and one of those who admired him, he says, Imam al-Shafi'i, the clarity of his voice is clearer than the ringing of a bell. And Bahr ibn Nassar, he says, when we were in Mecca, when we want to cry, we will go and pray behind the Shafei. He'll say to the people, let's go and pray behind the young Qurashi man. And they'll pray behind him, and when he begins to recite, he'll recite in such a beautiful way that all the people that are behind him, they'll start to cry, and even some of them, they'll begin to faint from the impact of his beautiful recitation. May Allah have mercy upon him. And whenever he senses that, he'll actually stop his recitation. So he had a beautiful voice. He was very modest in the way that he gets dressed. He will not get dressed in the finest of clothes. He used to wear a turban, a big turban similar to the turban of the Bedouins. Now remember this, because we're going to come to that again later on. And he would wear the khuf, and rarely he would put a qulunsuwa like the one that we wear. He was known, he would wear a big turban. When you see him, you'll think that he is a Bedouin, may Allah have mercy upon him. And they say he used to have a ring in his left hand, and he has engraved on it, Allah is the source of trust for Muhammad ibn Idris. He had only one wife, Hamda bint Nafi', who is the grandchild of Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu. And he had one concubine. Yeah, so his wife was from the lineage of Uthman ibn Affan, the great companion. And he had one concubine. And he had 4 kids. 2 boys, 2 girls. The first boy, Muhammad Abu Uthman, we already mentioned his name. And he became a judge. May Allah have mercy upon him. He says, Shafei says, I named my son after the name of the person that is most beloved to my heart, and that is Muhammad Abu Uthman. And that's his son from his wife. The second son, he also named him Muhammad, but he put next to his name Muhammad Abu al-Hasan, right, from his love to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And his second son was from his concubine. And he had 2 girls. He named one Fatima, and he named one Zainab. The son of Zainab, they say he inherited the blessing of his grandfather, and he became a famous scholar in fiqh. And that's why, and his name was Ahmad, and they will call him Ibn Bint al-Shafi'i. And he became a leading scholar, may Allah have mercy upon him. That's his family. Once he devoured all the alim that is in Mecca, and that's why you're noticing from the beginning that the lesson tonight is a bit dry. Why? Because the Shafi'i was a man of ilm. He was a man of ilm. His whole life seeking knowledge. After he devoured the knowledge of Medina, the knowledge of Mecca, he wanted to go to Medina to meet the star of Medina, who was Imam Malik, may Allah have mercy upon him. He was famous, Imam Malik, the founder or the scholar of the school of hadith. So he went to his first sheikh, the Mufti of Mecca, Muslim ibn Khalid, and he said, could you speak to the ruler of Mecca if he can give me a reference letter? And then I'll take it and I'll give it to the scholar, to the ruler of Medina, so he can speak to Imam Malik, so he can allow me in his circle. Because Imam Malik's circle was a huge circle. Not anyone enters the circle. So his Imam, his Sheikh, he said yes. So he wrote him a letter. He went to the ruler of Mecca. He gave him a letter, and then he took off and he went to Medina, 107 Hijri. So he was around 20 years old when he went to Medina. He went to Medina, he entered and he went to the court of the ruler of Medina, and he gave him the letter. The ruler of Medina looked at it and he read it, and then looked at the Shafi, and he said to him the following. He said to him, Wallah, it's more beloved to my heart to walk barefoot from the middle of Medina all the way until I reach the middle of Mecca, instead of me going to the house of Malik, out of the humiliation that I experienced on his door. So the ruler of Medina is saying to Shafei, you want me to take you to him? I'd rather go barefoot from here to Mecca, and I would not like to go to him from the humiliation that I experienced when I stand on his door. So the Shafei said, look at how the ulama were back then. Rulers used to be scared of them. Would scared to go next to their houses. So the Shafei said, why don't you send to him? Why do you have to go to him? He said to him, hayhat. He goes, impossible. Impossible for Malik to come here. He goes, if I take a complete delegate with me and we stand on his door, we'll be lucky if he gives us some of what we want. So saying, but since the ruler of Mecca gave you the letter, after Asr we'll go to him, we'll see what happens. So after Asr he went and they took Imam Shafei and they went to the house of Imam Malik. They knocked on the door. Imam Shafei, of course, sharp memory, describes to you everything that happens. Because we knocked on the door and I'm standing and a black servant opened up the door. He said to tell your master that the wali of Medina here, he would like to see Imam Malik. He said yes. He said, Imam Shafi, goes, so she went in and she never came back. I was standing in front of the house of Imam Malik. Because after all she came back and she said the following. She said, if you have a question, write it on that piece of paper. I'll take it inside. He'll answer it and then I'll give it out to you. Meaning Imam Malik would not like to see him. What do you want? You have a question? Allah, see, this is a paper. I'll write what you want. I'll take it in. He writes the answer. He gives it out to you. And if you want alim, you know where his circle is in the masjid of Medina. Allah ma'ak. Go away. He became, exactly as he said, he was humiliated. So he said to her, tell him there's an important letter for him from the ruler of Mecca. It's not me that want him, I'm just a messenger. I'm the postman. So she went in and then she came back with a chair. And she brought a chair and she put it in front of the door. One chair. He says, so Imam Malik came out and I was looking at him, Imam Shafi is young. He goes, and he was a tall man, wearing the talasan. The talasan is the dress code of the scholars. The scholars back then, they used to have a unique dress code. When you see him, you know that he's a sheikh. Wearing his talasan, and he sat on the chair. And the governor of Medina is doing what? He's standing in front of him. And he said, yes, the governor of Medina, he would not even speak to Imam Malik. He just handed the letter to him. Imam Malik looked at the letter and he read it, and then he became angry. And he said, this is how it became now? That the knowledge of the Rasul ﷺ gets taken by reference letters? He's shouting at who? The ruler of Medina. So Shafi goes, Wallahi, the ruler of Medina, he did not talk, he did not say a word. He goes, and I was seeing that the chance of me joining the circle of Malik vanishing away. So I spoke. He goes, I'm from the family of the Rasul. SubhanAllah, look how he did. He goes, I'm from the family of the Rasul. I'm a student of knowledge. And he began to tell him his story. So Imam Malik, he said, so he looked at me for some time. And Shafei says about Malik. He says, and he was a man of insight. And then he looked at me and he said, what's your name? He said to him, my name is Muhammad. Look at the advice of Imam Malik to the Shafi'i. He says, O young man, fear Allah and avoid sins. For inshallah, if you live, you will have a bright future. Look how the anger became true, became happiness. And then he said, Naam wa karama. He goes, yes, and you are welcome in my circle. Bring someone so he can read the muwatta for you. Too young to join the circle. Bring someone so he can read the muwatta for you so we can correct your reading. He goes, I memorized the muwatta, I'll read for myself. I said, okay. Next day he went and he joined the circle. So Imam Shafi is saying, sir, I went and I had the muwatta, even though he knew of Baha. He goes, I had the muwatta in front of me and I'm reading it to him from my memory, but I have the book in front of me. He goes, and as I'm reading on Imam Malik, I was scared of him because of his veneration, because of his maqam, big alim. So I would actually hesitate and then I would read, then stop. And then he would say to me, continue ya ghulam, zid ya ghulam. Because he used to like my way of reading. And therefore he completed the muwatta on him. It's already 40 minutes. SubhanAllah. He completed the muwatta on the Imam Malik in a couple of days. And he stayed with Imam Malik as a student for 9 years. Until Imam Malik rahimahullah died. So you see in the Imam Shafi'i the same action as Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. He stayed with Hamad ibn Abi Sulaiman until Hamad ibn Abi Sulaiman died. Imam Shafi'i stayed with Imam Malik until Imam Malik died 9 years. And he used to say, Malik in hadith is the star. And he is my reference in front of Allah. He is my hujjah in front of Allah. And he devoured all the ilm of Medina. Now I have to rush because I'm running out of time. From there, he returned to Mecca after he learned all the knowledge of Medina, but because he was poor, he had to work. So he asked one of his relatives and they found a job for him in Yemen. And he worked in Yemen as a bookkeeper, a clerk, very small job. His teachers were not happy with that. His alim, his brilliance, his intelligence, working as a bookkeeper. They did not like to see the waste of his talent, but he said, but I had to leave. He went there, he quickly became promoted because he was very professional, very smart. Anyway, he got moved to the city of Najran. He was given a managerial role, like a manager. Some ulama they say he was a judge. Now, there's a confrontation. In Najran, there was a man called Hamad al-Barbari, he's the ruler. Now, the system back then was the rich and this ruler, they have an agreement. I bribe you, you ease my transactions. Who became in the middle? Shafei. They tried to win him over, they couldn't. They tried to bribe him, they couldn't. He became a thorn in their throat. So Hamad was thinking, how can I get rid of him? At this time, there were some descendants of Ali radiallahu anh who wanted to take over the government. There were 10 of them. So he captured them and then he placed the Shafei with them. He wrote a letter to the Khalifa and he said, I captured 10 people that want to take over the government. They want to topple. Now, they want to topple your government and I'm sending them to you. And there's another man with them. He's a Muttalibi, his name is Muhammad ibn Idris. He never obeys a command that I give. So he placed his name way at the end of the list. He didn't say that he wants to topple, but he gave the implication. And therefore they changed Imam Shafei, may Allah have mercy upon him, and he was taken to Baghdad. To what? To meet the Khalifa. They entered on Harun al-Rashid. One by one they were executing them. One by one. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, the second most important student of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was sitting in the court. Once he saw the Shafi'i, he became very grieved because he has already heard about his fame, may Allah mercy upon him. But the Khalifa was so angry that no one can speak. The Khalifa, subhanallah, the rulers, they have no mercy. Lining up one by one, he'll chop their heads. Next, kill him, kill him, kill him. The last one, the 10th one, he looked at him, said to him, you want to take over my government? He said, no, I never want to take over a government. He said, you're a liar. They killed him. Who's next? Who's next? Wake up with me. Shafei. Ya Allah. Muhammad ibn al-Hassan is sitting there and he's mahmoom. And Shafei himself, he is seeing death. Look at his name. He said, he didn't say, I didn't go against you. He said, Ya Khalifa, if there are two people, one of them treats you as a brother, another person treats you as a slave, who would you support? The one that treats you as a brother or the one that treats you as a slave? Harun looked, he said, oh, the one that treats me as a brother. He said, we, the Muttalibi branch of the family of the Rasul ﷺ, to you, you treat us like brothers. But the descendants of Ali, we are like slaves. So how could it be that I would actually help someone that sees me as a slave against someone that sees me as a brother? He paused the anger of Harun. Now Harun looked, who's there? Muhammad al-Hassan. He said to him, what do you think of that man? SubhanAllah, look how Allah protected him. So Muhammad Hassan Shaybani, he said, the Shafi'i is a man of status in alim. And Adam believed that what has been attributed to him is true. This is not something that the Shafi'i would do. So Harun said, okay, if that's the case, then take him with you until I decide about his matter. And therefore Imam Shafi'i was actually saved by these conversations, by his words and the words of Imam Muhammad al-Hassan. And that was a blessing for him. Why? Because he said, so I sat with Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani and I learned all his ilm. And I carried the load of a big camel of books. Now try to fill up your car with books and see how many books you can fit in it. Hundreds of books you can fill up. He goes, I filled up the load of a huge camel from the ilm of Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. All of it I heard it from him directly. And he stayed in Iraq for 5 years. And he learned all the knowledge of the school of analogy. Madrasat al-Ra'i. He says, and after that I reviewed it one by one. I reviewed the books one by one. And he became very close to Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. and he began to debate with the scholar, with the students of the school of Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy upon him, who are known more for analogy. He stayed there for 5 years. He returned back to Medina. He returned back to Mecca. In Mecca, he became very famous. In Baghdad, he met who? Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, our Sheikh, he became in love with the Shafi'i. Why? Because Imam al-Shafi'i, since we're running out of time, Imam al-Shafi'i, he revolutionized the school of hadith. Baghdad was only in the hands of the school of analogy. And the students of hadith, they were only busy with collecting sunnah, and they were busy with getting the best chains, so they will not spend time on fiqh. Imam al-Shafi'i, encyclopedia. He began to teach him how to understand the hadith. So therefore they began to breathe. If they debate against the school of the students of analogy, they can now what? They can now win, because they know how to think. They know how to build arguments. They know how to understand the hadith. They know how to infer rulings. That's why, from the benefits of Imam al-Shafi'i upon the ummah, as per the words of Imam ibn Hanbal, he says, we and the scholars of analogy, the students of the school of analogy, we used to curse each other, and we used to always fight. I'm more correct, you're more correct. I'm more correct, you're more correct. Because until Imam al-Shafi'i came, and then he merged us together. He merged us together. He taught the students of the school of analogy more hadith, and he taught the students of the school of hadith how to understand and how to infer fiqh. That's why Hussein al-Karabisi and Abu Thawr, they say when we first went to join the circle of the Shafi'i, we actually were intending to mock him. He goes, but after 2 lessons we became one of his students. And Hussein al-Karabisi, he says, the Shafi'i is a rahmah from Allah upon the ummah of Muhammad. And that's why his circle within 1 week in the mosque in the western of Baghdad, there were 20 circles, they say, or 50 circles. Within 1 week, only 2 or 3 circles remained next to his circle. His circle became the biggest circle. When he returned to Mecca, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he came and he brought Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, the Imam of the Central Asia in Hadith, and he said, come, I'm going to show you a man that your eyes have not seen his like. And he set him in the circle of Muhammad ibn Idris. And he was young. He said to him, you are leaving the circle of Sufyan al-Uyayna, and you're sitting in the circle of Muhammad ibn Idris. And he said to him, yes, this is the man that you have not seen his like. And Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he used to say to Ibn al-Fadl, sit in the circle of the Shafi'i, and don't worry about the circle of Sufyan. If you miss a chain of hadith that is high from Sufyan, you will find the hadith through another chain. But if you miss the brain of the Shafi'i, you will not find its like. That's why Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, he used to say, the Shafi'i, because he is young, Allah gave him all his brain early. Because he died when he was 50 years old, may Allah have mercy upon him. He did not live for a long period of time. And that's why the Shafi'i became the teacher of his teacher. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he will be teaching and the Shafi'i is sitting, and one of the examples, many examples, one of them he gives is the hadith of Safiya, when the Rasul was returning his wife Safiya to her house when he was in Atikaf, and 2 of the Ansar, you know the hadith, they saw him and they rushed. After Sufyan narrated the hadith, he looked at the Shafi'i and he said, Ya Abu Abdullah, tell us, what does the hadith mean? How do you benefit from the hadith? I'm not going to go through this because there's no time. He said to him the meaning of the hadith, and then he said to him, Alhamdulillah, we only hear from you, Ya Shafi'i, what quenches and what pleases our hearts. May Allah have mercy upon him. He was also a person of Salah. Hussein Karabisi, the one that wanted to mock him, he became his student. He goes, I accompanied him for 80 days, and he will not miss a night except that he will pray in Qiyam. He goes, and 1/3 of his night you'll be in Qiyam. And every rak'ah that he prays in it 50 verses. And every time he goes past a verse that has mercy, he will make dua for himself and all the Muslims. And every time he goes past a verse that has punishment, he will seek refuge for himself and all the Muslims. In every single salah. And the Rabi'a he says the night of the Shafi'i was 3 parts. 1 part for ilm, 3/3. 1/3 for ilm, and 1/3 for the recitation of the Quran in qiyam, and 1/3 for sleep. And he used to recite the Quran completely once every day. So he used to have a khatma once a day. So 30 khatma in a month. And in Ramadan he will have 60. May Allah have mercy upon him. When he would go out in jihad, go to Alexandria, and he will sit in the trenches waiting, just protecting the borders of the Muslims. I used to go with him, and I'll sit next to him, and I'll just sit in front of the sea, and he'll just be reciting the Quran all the time, every day, while he is there, until he completed 60 khatma in Ramadan. So we finished the Quran once the whole month of Ramadan. The Shafei, we finished it 60 times, twice every day. He was not, he was not someone that is, that anyone can be compared to him. May Allah have mercy. May Allah have mercy upon him. And he used to pay sadaqah every day. And he was very generous, despite the fact that he was poor. Whenever he would get money, he will actually spend it in the path of Allah. Once he was given 20,000 dinar. He reached Mecca, he gave it all out, until he had nothing left. And he used to love his students. Once he bought a maid for them, he used to like sweets. And he was very, despite the fact that he was skinny. Once he bought a maid that knows how to cook. He said to them, what do you like of food? I bought a maid that knows how to cook, and she knows how to cook, and she can make good sweets. So tell her what you like, and she will make it for you. And he had a brain that is not believable. Yunus ibn Abdullah, he says, the Shafei, he will sit Fajr time, by the time of Dhuhr, he will finish writing a complete book. That's why, rahimahullah, when he was in Egypt, in 4 years, he wrote 200 books. 200 books. When he was sick. Because he, may Allah have mercy upon him, he had hemorrhoids. He used to have bleeding from his backside. I used to bleed a lot. May Allah have mercy upon him. The Rabi'ah says when he is riding, his clothes and his khuf will be filled with his blood. And as he advanced in age, his state became worse and worse. During the time when he was that ill, the last 4 years of his life, that's when he wrote 200 books. He's the founder of Usul Fiqh. He's the one that merged the school of hadith with the school of analogy. He's the one that founded some of the rules for hadith terminology. He's the one that wrote in the reconciliation of a hadith when you have conflicting between them. May Allah have mercy upon him. He's the one that he wrote in the ahkam of the verses of the Quran, the verses of ahkam. He was not someone that is normal. And he was very intelligent. I can't go through everything, and I don't want to go through 40. I'm going to go to another 10 minutes, and then I'll stop, inshallah. But I'll give you an example of his intelligence. Once they were sitting with his students, a man walked in, and he walked in, and he was looking amongst those who were sleeping. The Shafei looked at the Rabi' and said to him, tell him, the slave, the black slave that you're looking for, that has a problem in his left eye, is not here. He's most likely in prison. Rabi'a got up, he doesn't even know the man. He got up and went and told the man that, and the man went. He believed him. He goes, we sat with him, and then we couldn't help ourselves. He teased, how did you know? He's never seen him. The black slave that you are looking for, that has a problem in his left eye, is in prison. Wanted to know, sure, magic? So I said to him, how did you know? He said he entered and he was looking amongst those who are asleep. So therefore he's looking for someone that is running away from him. So that I knew that it is his slave. And I noticed that when he was, look at his focus. And I noticed that when he was looking on those, he would only look at those who are dark. So I knew that the slave that he's looking for is dark. And I noticed that he always go to the left side of the one that is sleeping. And therefore that I knew that he has a problem with his left eye. And since his slave ran away from him, so if he's not here, then he might have committed that particular crime. So most likely he'll be in prison. I said to him, go to prison. Look at that brain. May Allah have mercy. May Allah have mercy upon him. He used to like to pay his sadaqah at night. And that's why when he used to go out to pay his sadaqah every night, he will go out at night. And he will not sleep a lot. He sleeps. His maid used to be exhausted by his habits. He wakes up, light up for me the light. She lights it up, he sits down, he writes. He goes to sleep and then he wakes up again. And he writes until his student Rabia complained from him. He's sleeping, you wake up and you turn the lights on, the lights off. We want to sleep. He goes to him, I can't help it. The thought comes to my mind, he wakes up and then he writes his knowledge, may Allah have mercy upon him. And he was strong in debates. Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Hakam, he says, I used to feel sorry, one of his students, I used to feel sorry for the one that would stand in a debate against the Shafei. Because he'll be like someone standing in front of a lion that wants to devour him. But how? Loud voice? Screaming anger? No. Muhammad Abu Uthman, his son, he says, never did my father raise his voice in a debate over the voice of the one that is debating him. Never. But his hujjah, his proof, may Allah have mercy upon him, was strong. When you talk, he'll shut you up. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, the second best student of Imam Abu Hanifa, he heard when he was in Iraq that Shafei is debating his students. But he will never debate Muhammad because he became his teacher. One day I said to him, you keep on debating my students. Why don't you debate me? He goes, no, I don't debate you. I said, no, you debate me. He said, no, I don't debate you. You're my sheikh. He goes, no, you're going to have to. So I said, okay. Let's go. So they began the debate. I'm going to narrate the debate. He said to him, what do you say about a man that stole a piece of log, a log of food from someone? Then he took it and he built his house and he put it as one of the pillars of his house. He used it for the foundations of his house. And then it was proven later on that he has actually اغتصبها من فلان. He has stolen it from Fulan. By two witnesses. So therefore there's proof. What do you say? I say the fatwa here is that either he's given the choice, the owner of the log. Either he gets given the value of it, how much is it worth? 1,000, he gets given 1,000. Or the log gets returned to him. Which means what? You knock down the house. Muhammad said, okay, what do you say about a man that took a log? The same thing. And then it was used in the building of a ship. And then he read on the ship and he found out that his log that was taken from him was used in the manufacturing of the ship. And he says, I want my piece of log. It's mine. He said, I say, they go back to port and then he gets given the choice. Either he gets the value of the log, or you're going to have to take the parts of the ship, the parts of the log that were used in building the ship. Meaning you have to dismantle the ship. Muhammad Hassan, what he's doing is leading him into a trap. So I said to him, Tayyib, what do you say about the man that has stolen a string of silk from someone? And they had a problem in his stomach and they stitched him up with it. And then the owner, you've seen it. And then the owner of the thread, look how fine the fatwa is. It's lucky if we learn from the servants that work for them. He goes, and then the owner of the thread, he wanted it. He's checking the consistency of his rule, of the principle that he's applying. He goes, what do you say? Does he have the choice? Either take the value or to take the string? He said to him, no. He only has the choice of taking the value. He said to him, you defaulted on your principle. You defaulted on your principle, ya Shafei. And I'll cut you. The Shafei said to him, wait. He said, let's assume that this log was owned by the one that has it. And he wants to take it out of the foundation of the house. Does he have that right? Muhammad said to him, yes. And that's why in the debate, Muhammad began to sweat. He began to sweat. He said to him, yes. He goes, Tayyib, if he is the owner of the log and he put it in the ship and then he decided to take it out, does he have the right to do so? He said, yes. He goes, Tayyib, if he is the owner of the thread, it is his own thread, is he allowed later on, after he stitched his stomach with it, to take it out? He said to him, no. He said to him, that's why my ruling in the first changed. The first set of examples that he gave was talking about an issue where he has an authority in keeping or in getting rid of. He goes, but in the thread, since it is used in the preserving of his life, then he's not allowed to take it out. Why? Because it jeopardizes his own life, his own health. Just to show you the brain that he, may Allah have mercy upon him, had. He became very ill towards the end of his life. And one list is not enough for Shafei. Now I'm skimming through things. He became very ill. He could not go out from his house. And he became very skinny. He could not even make salah. And his students will gather around him every single day. They'll go pray and they'll sit next to him. May Allah have mercy upon him. And on the day that he died, which was a Friday as well, on the day that he died, they were sitting with him, and he was very ill, and he began to cry, and he began to read poetry that talk about his need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he said to the Rabi'a, he said, go to Idris al-Abbad and ask him to make dua for me, as I feel that my time is coming close. He became thirsty. They said, bring him more water. He said, no, mix more water with some jam, a jam of Savirji. And then he drank it, and then after this, by some time, he died. May Allah have mercy upon him. And then they buried him. And of course, the whole of Egypt was shaken by his death. Rabi', he says, before his death, when he was sick, the Ma'mun sent him a letter. And he said, I want to make you the judge of the Muslims during his sickness. He made dua to Allah. He said, Ya Rab, if this is something that you love from me, then ease it. If not, take me to you. Well, 3 days after this, he died. 3 days after that, he died. Rabi', his student, he says, before he died, I saw in my dream that Adam alayhi salam died. When I asked someone that interpret dreams, he said to me, a knowledgeable man is going to die. He said to him, how did you know? He goes, because Allah taught Adam all the names, and therefore the man that is going to die is going to be of the rank of Adam alayhi salam. He goes, a couple of days after this, Imam Shafei died. And the Rabi'a that was closest to him, he says, after his death, I saw him in the dream. And I asked him, Ya Shafei, what has Allah done to you? SubhanAllah. He says, he set me on a throne of gold, and he poured on me the best of pearls. Towards the time of Nizam al-Mulk, years after, Nizam al-Mulk, the leader of the Muslims, the one that freed Egypt from the Fatimiyin, the one that revived the movement of jihad. He's the one that led to the Zinkis and then the Ayyubis. He wanted, from his love to Imam Shafei rahimahullah, he wanted to move his body from Egypt to Iraq. So he sent to the Mustansir Billah, and he sent him many gifts, meaning his bribing. We want to move the grave, the body of Shafei, and Maqarizi mentions that in his book of Tariq, from Egypt to Baghdad. Mustansir, he's happy, no problems. He said yes. He took the gifts and they did. He goes, so they opened up his grave, and they used to bury on the Sunnah, which is lahad, meaning you go down and then you make a slot and then you put the body in and you closed it. So they said they opened up his grave and they're digging, and as they reached the state to the lahad part, a nice scent came out from his grave. It intoxicated those who were around, and they slept. They woke up, and then they put the soul again, and they never touched his grave. May Allah have mercy upon him. After that, they never touched his grave. Yani subhanAllah, and Allah did not want to move him from the place where he was in Egypt. Our Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he says, the Shafi'i is the mujaddid of his time. And when his son was surprised how much love he has for him, he said to him, my son, can the world exist without the warmth of the sun? And can people live without healthiness, without health, fitness? He said no. He goes, this is how Shafei is to this religion. But despite this, I want to conclude with this, very important. He was very adherent to the hadith of the Rasul ﷺ. And that's why it is established beyond doubt by his students that he says, if I give a ruling and later on you discover a hadith that is authentic, then the authentic hadith is my ruling. And once a man who was sitting in his circle, and he said to him, Ya Shafi'i, he narrated the hadith from the Rasul ﷺ. He said to him, Ya Shafi'i, do you take your opinion or do you go by the hadith? And he, rahimahullah, became yellow and he shook from his feet. There's a lot about him. And he said to him, do you see me sitting in a church? Do you see me wearing the dress code of the priests? Aren't I sitting in the masjid? Aren't I sitting facing the qibla of the Muslims? Aren't I dressed in the code of the ulama? How could I hear a hadith from the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and not follow it. And he said, there's no earth that will carry me, and there's no heaven that will shelter me if I will ever dare to hear an authentic hadith from the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I will not act upon it. The hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is on the head and in our eyes. May Allah have mercy upon him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon him. And I did go through over time, but you had to hear some of the glimpses of his life. May Allah have mercy upon him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide this ummah with his like that can revive the religion of Allah again on all levels. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to resurrect us with the like of Imam Shafei wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakumullah khair.